Bershus Damardasra, we're continuing our Shir and Dishu Bahalacha. We're holding in Halacha on Kuf Tzadik Aleph, Amud Aleph. We're in Siman Shin Mem, and we're going to beginning from Siv Zayin. But first, we're going to go to Perkei Avos. We're holding in Perek Rishain, and we are up to Mishnah Ches. The Mishnah says, Yehuda ben Tabai v'Shimon ben Shetach kiblu mehem. Yehuda ben Tabai omer. Al tas atzmecha k'archei hadayonin. You should not make yourself like those who arrange the din, colloquially known as lawyers. Al tas atzmecha k'archei hadayonin. Ukishayu balidinim oimnim lefanecha. When the balidin, when the disputants are in front of you for din, yu beinecha kirishayim. You should look at them as rishayim. Ukishaniftarim lefanecha. And after the din has been decided, when they're leaving you, you should view them both as being innocent, when they have accepted upon themselves the decision of Bezdin. You should assume that everybody is going to follow the psak in an erlicha manner, and you should treat them, you should look at them as being both tzaddikim. First thing of interest that I would just mention is the Mishnah is mentioning here Yehuda ben Tabai and Shimon ben Shetach. Shimon ben Shetach, Zachal HaToiv, the two things that I would mention from Shimon ben Shetach that we all know about, the two lasting things that Shimon ben Shetach did, one was ksuba. The ksuba that we have, that we do by every chasana, that was put in place by Shimon ben Shetach. And the other thing that we have from Shimon ben Shetach is yeshivas. Shimon ben Shetach is the one who put in place the system of, I guess, what you would call elementary schools. He started it for children that didn't have, it started originally from Yisaimim, that you're shaking your head over there. No, Shimon ben Shetach. Made yeshivas, originally it started with Yisaimim, people who didn't have anybody else to teach them, so he formalized a system of yeshivas, and those are two things that we have from him, besides Milvad, all the Torah that he taught, but I just thought that we could die to mention it. Now, Yehuda ben Tabai said, Al tas atzmecha k'archei hadayonin. You shouldn't make yourself like those who arrange the din. And the lashon of the Rav over here, the Rav says, what does that mean? Ka'osan anoshim sha'archim u'misadrim tainois balei din lifnei hadayonim. You shouldn't make yourself like those people, or what they do is, they arrange the tainis, they arrange the arguments of the disputants. So the disputants come, and they don't know, they might not know anything, they don't know the particular halachas, they don't know what's considered a valid claim, what's considered a valid argument. So you have the oirech din who sits down and says, okay, what's your case, all right? So you can make a claim like this, and you can use an argument like that, and when the dayan asks you a question, make sure you should answer him like this. So he's arranging the din. And the Rav continues, he says, V'loimer loy asei kach, you should say like this, b'shvil shetizke b'dinecha, so that you should win. V'afal pisha yedea shadin imoy. You're not allowed to do this even if you know that this person is right. So you somehow you heard the case, and you know that this dayan, Ruvain, has a dispute with Shimon, and you know that the din is with Ruvain. So now you want to help Ruvain win. You don't want to see Ruvain walk out of the din and get slammed because the other guy knew how to make a better argument. So you're going to help out Ruvain, and you're going to tell Ruvain, listen, this is what you should do. Now, according to most, it seems that the directive of this Mishnah is really directed at the Dayanim. The Mishnah, the Tana, is telling the Dayanim, the judges, don't act as an oirech din. So somehow this case came before you. You hear the particular of the cases. Now, on the side, you're going to be helping out one of the disputants. You're going to say, look, Ruvain, I mean, I've heard this whole case. Clearly you're right? But you're not making your arguments well. This is after you make your arguments. Again, even though he knows he's right. The din has to be pure. We have to know that the din that comes out of a bezdin is a pure din. It's one, and I'm being very careful. I don't want to say that we have to make sure that the din is 100% accurate. Irving Bunim has a beautiful line in his Seif on Avos. He says that oirech din we assume, and it probably is that way, that the lashon of orchei dayanim comes from an oirech din, somebody who arranges the din. He arranges the tainus. He wonders if it's possible that it also comes from the Greek. I don't know how it would be pronounced, but the Greek word archi, which he says is the root for what we use in English for arch enemy, or archbishop, or archetype, right? So the arch enemy is the chief, the biggest enemy. So he says an oirech din is a dayan who makes himself more than he is. He takes upon himself the role. No longer does he see his role just as judging the case. He also now wants to go to a point where he's arranging the case. He's taken the acharayas upon himself. I see Ruvain is right. So now I want to arrange the case so that Ruvain should win. That's not the role of a dayan. The role of a dayan is to hear the case and to judge the case al pi the tainus, al pi halacha, to go ahead and judge. It's not his role to arrange and manipulate and change, because once you start doing that, that's a very slippery slope. Once you start going down that path, suddenly you start interjecting yourself too much into what's going on, especially when you put yourself in a position where you're actually now helping one side. Once you start helping one side, now it's not even going to be possible for you anymore to hear arguments from the other side, because your mind is already that way. Once your mind is already slanted one way, you're not going to be able to extricate yourself from that and start listening to another Tana from the other side. So the Tana over here is very, very careful. And the Tana says you cannot do that. You have to remain completely 1,000% objective. You can't allow yourself in any way to start getting caught up. It's interesting that I don't know if this is, no, it's the wrong, it's Shimon ben Shetach, it's Yanai's. It's Yanai's brother-in-law. It's not Hurdis. It's not Hurdis, it's Yanai. Okay. And then at the end, the Tana said over here that when the Dayanim are in front of you, they have to be like Rishoyim. Why are we telling the Dayanim that they have to look at the disputants as Rishoyim? Because the Dayanim have to be willing to pick apart and attack everything both sides. You can't, you're a Dayan, once they're in front of you, there's no trust. There's no trust. You have to listen to both of those, and you have to pick each one of them apart. You can't sit there and say, hey, I think he's trustworthy. There's no such thing as trust. You're here now for a din. You're here for a din. I'm going to question everything that you say. I'm going to question. I had a personal experience. It's not exactly like this, but how it struck me, where I was working for a yeshiva at the time, and in an administrative capacity, and the Vara Chinuch was concerned about something in the yeshiva, and they wanted to speak to me about it. So I came into the Vara Chinuch, and one of the Rabbanim, tremendous Talmid Chacham, one of the Rabbanim on the Vara Chinuch, who I was close with, before the meeting started, he told me, he said, Rabbi Yisrael, I need you to realize something before the meeting begins. I said, what's that? He said, the meeting is in that room. So I said, right. He said, right now we're in this room. In this room, you're my friend. In that room, you're not my friend. In that room, I'm on the Vara Chinuch, and you're working for the yeshiva. So please understand that if it gets uncomfortable, if I'm asking you very direct questions or I'm picking things apart, realize that that's my job. I'm in the Vara Chinuch, and we have to figure out what's going on over here. And Kachava, when the meeting began, he's a very shrewd, very big Talmid Chacham, and a very shrewd person, and he asked very probing questions, and sometimes you feel a little bit like what, you don't trust me, but that's his job. His job is to question. And when they leave, it has to be you beinecha gizakoyin. And I think this is also important, not only for the simple reason, which is that when they leave, you can't be choshed somebody. We know that to be choshed b'ksherim is a big thing. You're not allowed to be choshed b'ksherim. So you paskin the din, you assume that they're going to accept the din. But I think it goes a little bit beyond that also. And that is that a person has to believe in the power the ability of a person to do tshuva. He has to believe in the ability of a person to change his ways. He has to believe in the ability of a person to be makabel teichacha. And he has to believe in that because he has to know that it's possible for himself too. Everybody has to know. Somebody who's so jaded that he looks at somebody who loses a din Torah and he says, the guy's a rat. I mean, you see, he did an avla, right? We just had a case, and it turns out that he did an avla, and he was wrong. You think he's going to be makabel the din? He's probably going to walk out of here, and he's going to come up with 16 different ways to circumvent the din. And if you become so jaded that that's the way your mindset, your mindset works that way, it affects you also. Berurah always says, we had a Maisa years ago where there was an Anhala meeting in the yeshiva in Berurah's office, and it was about a sensitive topic where the Bachrim were very, very curious, what the decision was going to be. And right next to Berurah's office in those days was a dormitory room. And I noticed, like one Bacher after the other, one at a time, Bacher walking into that room, who I knew didn't sleep in that room. What are they doing there? So I opened up the door and I looked inside. And I find 3 Bacher with glasses pressed against the wall, like this. Yeah. So I knocked on Berurah's door and I said, just the Rebbe should realize that there are 4 Bacher in the room next door trying like anything. I don't know if they can hear anything, but they're certainly trying. So Berurah looked at me and he said, make sure I don't find out who they are. Because if I find out who they are, they're out of yeshiva. Now, people who are familiar with the yeshiva throw a Bacher out of yeshiva Staten Island. This is not something that happens, But Berurah said, if I find out who they are, they're out of yeshiva. There's no question. I don't care who they are. They're gone today. So I walked into the room and I told them, I said, listen, guys, I just want you to know that this is what Berurah just said. If he finds out who you are, you're gone today. So they all they realized, they heard the severity of it and they ran. But Berurah was talking to me later, and Berurah, he was so upset by it. And Berurah told me, he said, it never even dawned on me, all the years that my office is here, it never once dawned on me the possibility that there could be a Bacher in the next room trying to listen into something. He says, and you know why? You're only choshed somebody for something that you could at least imagine yourself doing. He says, if you can't even imagine doing it, you wouldn't be choshed somebody else for it. He says, I can't imagine such a thing. So I couldn't possibly be choshed for it. That's what he said. So you see that the way you look at somebody else is affected by the way you operate also. A person has to have the ability to accept teichacha, to accept the idea that he's wrong, to accept the idea that he made a mistake, and then to move on from it, to accept the teichacha, do tshuva, and move on. And if you're so jaded as a dayan that you can't even imagine that the guy is going to do that, then that has an effect by you as well. All right. Siman Shin Mem Siv Zayin. Top of Kuf Tzadik Aleph Amud Aleph. Oisam shemahadkim habegodim saviv Yisrael. Those who tighten their clothing around their arms, al yedei achut, through the use of a string or a thread, shemoischen oisai, where they pull it, umishadek, and it becomes tight. What does this mean? This is really a drawstring. But it's not the type of drawstring like, let's say, when we have a hood and the string goes through a pocket and it comes out on each end. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about here is where the garment has holes in it and there is a thread or a string that's threaded through the holes. Like a shoe. Very good. Like a shoe. So in essence, if you picture it in your mind, what is that? It's almost like stitches. Right? It's going through. So it's really, what is it? It's magnified stitches. Now we learned yesterday that if you have a thread that it's holding 2 fabrics together and it has a bunch of stitches and the ends are loose and the fabrics come apart and you pull the thread to tighten the stitches and you pull the fabrics together, we said that that's teifer. So now the Mechaber is saying, well, how about this drawstring, right? So it seems that what they had, this was very common on their sleeves. That's what the Mechaber means here. Shemahadkim habegodim saviv zroiseim. They would tighten the sleeve around their arm. Al yidei achut, through that string. Shemoischen haisai, where they would pull it, umishadek, and it would make the sleeve tight. So says the Mechaber, Asur lamaschai, you're not allowed to pull it tight. Ella imkain yiyu hanikavim rechavim ktas, unless the holes are somewhat wide, so the holes are loose. Umisukanim bitfira beeagle, and the holes that the thread is threaded through are finished. If they're finished with stitching, like a buttonhole, if they're finished with stitching, so then if they're loose and finished with stitching, then it's allowable. Let's take a look in the Chavetz Chaim. Eis Katan Chavches, Eisan Shemahadkin, Darkin Haya, it was their way, Litein Chut Pesaycha Beis Yad Shal Zroyai, to thread a string or a thread through the sleeve that was on the arm. Tikesharoitza Lahadkai, when they wanted to make it tight, Haya Maiseach Achut, they would pull the string, Umishadek Hetev. And I think these two words are very critical. Umishadek Hetev. And it would get nice and tight. So, what the Chavetz Chaim is telling you here, if you read between the lines, is that we're talking here about something that was tight. By pulling it, obviously, when the Mechaber is saying that you're not allowed to do it, he's talking about where those holes are very tight, and by pulling the string, the sleeve tightened, and when you let go, it stayed that way. It didn't just automatically loosen up, because again, we're talking about small, tight holes. However, in Chavtes, the Chavetz Chaim says, if they're rechavim ktsas u'mesukanim, if the holes are somewhat wide and the holes are finished off, then it's mutter. Says the Mishnah Berurah, da'az, because then einoi doime klal l'toifer. Then this is no longer similar to toifer at all. If we're talking about loose holes that the string is threaded through, and we're talking about holes that are finished off, this is not toifer. What is this like? This is like where you're putting hooks into loops, or what we know as buttons. Now really you're dealing with something like a button. You're dealing with, what does a button do? A button also attaches two pieces of fabric, and it can even attach them nice and tight, right? But we don't look at that as toifer. That's not toifer. Since these holes are finished off and they're wide, so it's very clear that this was made to be loosened and tightened and loosened and tightened. To tighten it when you're wearing it. And also to loosen it when you want to take it off. So this is not toifer. Toifer, like Rav Moshe writes in the Igris, toifer is when you want to turn two pieces of fabric into one. That's toifer. Something that's opening and closing and opening and closing and opening and closing, that's not toifer. A zipper is not toifer. That's why the Rishon Latzar writes that you're allowed to take the lining of your spring coat, you're allowed to take it out, you're allowed to put it in on Shabbos, even if you're going to leave it there for 6 months. It's the beginning of the winter, I'm putting the lining in, I'm going to leave it there for 3 months, I'm going to leave it there for the whole winter. Doesn't matter, that's not toifer. That's not a permanent connection. And you don't need to rip anything to take it apart. It's made to open and close. So that's not toifer anymore. Now, there's a caveat that the Chavetz Chaim throws in here, which I spoke to several people who were struggling exactly how to interpret it. But the Chavetz Chaim says, Vim ein mahad kayafe. However, if you tighten this drawstring, but you don't make it extremely tight. You know, there are some people that tie their shoes. Me personally, when I'm wearing tie shoes, I like my shoes very tight. I need the support of the shoe. Some people don't like tying and untying their shoes. So what they do is they tie their shoe not so tight, and they turn their tie shoe into a slip-on shoe. They have it loose enough that they can slip their foot in and out, and they leave the shoe tied all the time. So says the Chavetz Chaim here about the sleeve, if you do not tighten it well, and sometimes you set it that way and then you leave it that way forever, and you're in the habit of squeezing your hand out, while it's closed and not opening it, then the Chofetz Chaim says you are not allowed to tie this on Shabbos. Now, the question becomes, I don't understand. If this is a button, so then it doesn't matter. You're allowed to unbutton and unbutton the shirt even if you leave it there for 6 months. That's if it's a button. LMI, it's not a button. This is kind of a gray area. And what I would venture to say is the reason it's a gray area is for the following reason. By a button, you have 2 reasons why it's mutter. One reason it's mutter is because, like the Yeshiva Zatzal says, it's not teifer. That's not called teifer. That's not the malacha of teifer. You also don't have the tzuras hamalacha of teifer. It doesn't look like teifer. You don't have stitches, right? It's kind of like my Mishnah Berurah ripped yesterday, and I scotch taped the page together. Guess what? You would not be allowed to scotch tape your page together on Shabbos. That would be teifer. Even though you don't have the tzuras hamalacha of teifer. I'm not stitching. Right, because what am I doing? I'm taking 2 pieces and I'm turning them into one with something sticky. So that's called teifer, even though you don't have the tzuras hamalacha of teifer. Over here by the button, you don't have the tzuras hamalacha, and it's also not permanent. Over here by the drawstring, even though the Chofetz Chaim said if the holes are wide and they're finished off, it's more similar to a button, and therefore the Mechaber says it's mutter. But if you're going to tighten it and you're going to leave it that way, we're going to aser it midrabanan because it has the tzuras hamalacha of teifer. It looks like stitches. It essentially is the same thing as teifer. Only thing is, it's mutter if it's finished off and it's wide, right? Then it's mutter because it became like a button. But since the tzuras hamalacha is there, if you're going to set it that way and you're going to leave it there permanently, now we're going to aser it midrabanan. It seems that there are also, I've heard, some that want to aser this for a different reason, but I don't believe at all that that's where the Mishnah Berurah is coming from, because he's coming from the Beis Yosef, and the Beis Yosef is clearly talking about teifer, that some want to say that there's a problem of makeh b'patish, of tikkun moneh, that by setting up the shirt that way and making it in a way that it could be permanently used that way, there's some angle of makeh b'patish, but that escapes me. Okay.
They may have the same argument with a cuff or a shirt that we spoke about yesterday, but just like we said, that's not permanent, this would also not be permanent. People do that with cuffs. It used to be years ago.
Yeah. So you're right. So the Yeshiva Zatzal is mad to that, and the truth is you're asking me an interesting question, which is if the problem over here is the tzuras hamalacha, the l'chara over there you have the tzuras hamalacha also. That's a very valid question. I don't have a quick answer to that. Okay, so the Mechaber said over here, if the holes are finished off b'tfira, the Chofetz Chaim says in Ois Katan Lamed b'tfira, savev hanekev, where it's finished off with stitching around the hole like a buttonhole. Va'oz, then afilu achot tachuv b'makat nekuva. Chofetz Chaim is making a side point over here. If the holes are finished off and they're somewhat wide, so he said it's mutter to pull it tight. Oz afilu achot tachuv b'makat nekuva. Shehu talui sham b'tmidus. Even if the ends of the string that you're using to pull are inserted into the eye of a needle, and you use that needle, that's the handle. It's like, the shoelace has the plastic end, right? So over here, they took the end of the string and they put it into the eye of a needle, and that's what you use. You use the needle to tie it. Then, and that's the needle that was used to thread it through. Shari, it's still mutter. Ve'ein b'ay mishum tiltal. You don't have a shiloh of tiltal muktzah on the needle. Since the thread, since the needle is hanging on this string, v'apsil ba'beged, and the string is inserted in the beged, ve'ein nifrad bimenu la'olam, and you don't take it off, you never take it off, so the machat is now bottled to the garment. We don't look at it as a machat anymore, a needle, a sewing needle, which is muktzah. We don't look at it as that anymore. Now it's bottled to the beged, it's part of the beged. Okay. It's that needle is what was used to thread it through the holes in the garment. like your shoelace. You use the plastic end, right? That you use that plastic end to thread it through the eyes. When that plastic end breaks off of your shoelace, it becomes very difficult to get the laces in. So over here, you used that needle to thread it, and now you leave it there. Now, but what he's saying is the needle was there. It was the handle that was used to go thread it through, and now you leave it there and you use it to tighten it. So you might think that there's a question of tiltul muktzah on the needle. He's telling you it's not, because now it's part of the garment. Yeah, that's what he says, tiltul. The ein boy mishum tiltul. He's just letting you know that there's no problem with tiltul muktzah. To what? Sorry?
To loop the needle on Shabbos, as if you were going to go sew something you couldn't do.
Well, to loop this needle, you probably would be allowed to. You know, as if this needle fell off, I imagine why not?
If you had a lace and the plastic fell off, you couldn't get the lace through the shoe. You could take a needle and put the material through the needle and pull it through.
I don't see why not. It's a klisha v'lachta l'isser, and you're using it for something that's mutter. I don't see why not offhand. Okay, Sif Ches, on the top of Kuf Tzadik Aleph Amud Beis. Muchin shenaflu min hakeses.
In other words, as long as you don't make a permanent knot, it will be okay.
I would think so.
Right.
Muchin shenaflu min hakeses. If the stuffing fell out of a pillow, mutter lahachziram. You're allowed to put that stuffing back in. Aval also litneim betchila bakeses. However, you are not allowed to take a pillow that was never filled and stuff a pillow for the first time on Shabbos. Says the Mishnah Berurah is kat lamed aleph muchin kol davar rach kari muchin. This word of moichin or muchin is used for anything that's soft, any kind of soft stuffing. Kagain, for example, tzemer gefen, cotton, or griras begadim, or the shreds, griras begadim beluyim, the shreds of worn-out clothing, or kahagavna, or anything similar to that would be used for stuffing. For huadin noitzais, or also similar to that, would be feathers that you use to stuff a pillow. Motor lachziram, loisa keses. You're allowed to replace that stuffing into that pillow. Why? The kevan the kfar hoyusham, since the stuffing was already there before Shabbos, ein bazeh mishum tikkun moneh. The problem over here is a problem of tikkun moneh, or makabah patish. The problem is, if you have a pillow that was never filled, it's not a pillow. Now, if you take stuffing and you stuff it on Shabbos, you have made a pillow. Making a pillow is tikkun moneh or makabah patish. That you can't do. But if it was a pillow before Shabbos, and now the stuffing came out, it is a pillow that the stuffing came out of. Therefore, you're allowed to put the stuffing back in. The Meiri over here, the Gemara in Shabbos, goes out of his way to say, you might think that when the stuffing comes out of the pillow, it is no longer a pillow. And now when you restuff it, you're doing tikkun moneh, you're doing makabah patish again, and you're making it a pillow from scratch. Says the Meiri, no, it was a pillow, it is a pillow. Just now it's an unstuffed pillow. So you're not making it a pillow. What's interesting is the shaila that the contemporary shaila that they speak about over here is inflatables. Are you allowed to blow up a beach ball on Shabbos? Are you allowed to pump up a basketball on Shabbos? Are you allowed to anything that has to be inflated? Are you allowed to inflate it on Shabbos? It seems most of the poskim are of the opinion that the halacha is the same, which is that you're not allowed to blow it up for the first time, because by blowing it up for the first time, you're making a ball. That's makabah patish. But if it was blown up already and now it's deflated, so now you could reinflate it. And the chiddush, the knetch in halacha that's interesting is that, you see, over here where we're talking about the pillow, the stuffing came out of the pillow and you're putting the same stuffing back in the pillow. By the ball, right, it's not really the same air. It's different air. Yet the poskim use the terminology that we don't look at it that way. Because the air is air. The air is air is air is air. This air is the same as that air is the same as that air. So it's the same air. We don't look at it. You're re-pumping it.
The problem is you're taking something that may not be functional, making it functional with a ball. Now all of a sudden that ball can be used to level off the ground, etc.
Well, the pillow also. You had a pillow, and now you don't have a pillow.
Right, but you're not doing anything that's mopsil. Here with the ball, you're potentially going to be doing something that's mopsil with it.
Why? What would you?
It's not a ball. Once it's deflated, you cannot use it anymore.
And the pillow, once it's unstuffed, you cannot use it as a pillow.
You can use the line to stuff it.
You could what?
You can use the stuffing to lie your head on. You can't use the ball.
Not if you have a pile of loose stuffing, you can't use it for anything, right?
You could cover up the bowl, use it to cover something. Anyways.
They do say that maybe by the pillow, technically, like if you imagine one of our pillows, so it's a bag. They do talk about that technically the pillow still has a use because you could use it as a purse. Yeah.
I don't understand it. If it's a pillow, if it was a pillow, then it's a pillow. What's the difference I put in new feathers or old feathers? If it's a pillow, it's a pillow.
No, you're asking, if I want to restuff it, can I restuff it with new feathers that were never used before? So over there they want to say that it's makeh b'patish on the feathers, or it's makeh b'patish on the stuffing. And it was like this, you have a pile of loose stuffing. Once you put it into a pillow, you turned that stuffing into a pillow. So it's makeh b'patish on the stuffing. That's what I saw.
How are you going to have the bowl is very interesting. If you're going to use a tool to blow it up, now you're going to have to
So yeah, so then you're going to get involved. Then you start getting involved in uvda dechayil and in those kind of shots. You hear what I'm saying? That's what they.
If I take a dish and I put it in my closet, what did I do? I made a bucket of patish on the dish.
No, the dish was a dish. If I have a bag of
It
stuffing,
just happens to be there, the feather.
if you go to the upholsterer and you want to buy stuffing, you don't ask him, can I have that pile of pillow, right? Can I have stuffing? You could use stuffing for 300 different things. You buy stuffing. You could even use stuffing to pack when you're
And
moving.
if it doesn't have stuffing in the store, he says, I got it in the pillow, do you want it?
Okay, so then it was already a pillow, maybe. But over here, if you want to take new stuffing that was never used, and you're putting it into a pillow, you're doing makeh b'patish on the pillow and on the stuffing. I think it's brought down in there. I think it's brought down in the dishu in one of the footnotes.
Talking about air.
Yeah. All right, let's go weiter. So lamed beis mutar lachziro loisei hakeses. You could restuff the pillow. They came in the kvar hoyusham ein bazeh mishum tikkun maneh ach sheyizor shelo yitvar. But you do have to be very careful that when you restuff this pillow, you shouldn't forget yourself and come to sew it closed. So he's just warning you, be careful. Lamed gimel betchila, to stuff the pillow for the first time you can't do the hashta avid leimaneh, because now you're making a pillow. V'yesh bazeh chiyuv daraisa. That's makeh b'patish daraisa. Sif tes. Says the Mechaber, also lekabetz melach mimisrefais hamelach. You're not allowed to gather salt from the place where the salt becomes evaporated. Mimisrefais hamelach literally would mean from the place of the burning of the salt. What this means is one of the ways they would derive sea salt would be they would dig a ditch so that the water would overflow from the sea into a ditch, into a shallow canal, in a place where it's very sunny. Then that water would sit there. Eventually the sun would evaporate the water, and you would be left with salt. So you're using evaporation to get the salt out of the water. Now you go ahead and you collect the salt. Says the Mechaber, also lekabetz melach mimisrefais hamelach. You're not allowed to go collect the salt from that canal, that ditch, where the salt evaporated out of the water. Why? Shedoime l'ma'amer. Because it's similar to the malacha of ma'amer, of gathering. Says the Mishnah Berurah, nice cut in Lamed Daled, mimisrefais hamelach, sheyesh mekaimais, there are places, shemamshich l'soichan mayim min hayam, where they draw water into ditches from the sea, v'achamas arfasan, and the sun evaporates the water, v'hei nasin melach, and now you have a pile of salt. You're not allowed to collect that salt because it's doime to ma'amer. Says the Chavetz Chaim is cut lamed hey. Shedoime the malaches ma'amer. Who? What is the malacha? One of the lamites malachas. What is the malacha of ma'amer, of gathering? Le'asayf hashibolin, to go gather the ears of grain together out from the field. V'gam hu ke'ein zeh. This is similar to that. Now, why is it similar? The point that the Chavetz Chaim is going to make now is that the malacha of ma'amer is to go out into the field, to the place where the ears of grain grow, makom giduloi, and to go gather up the ears of grain. That's ma'amer. What are you doing over here? Essentially, the ditch where you evaporated the water, that is, so to speak, it's akin to the makom giduloi of the salt. That's where the salt grew, quote unquote. right? You had water, it evaporated into salt. Now to gather the salt is similar to ma'amer. It's not ma'amer daraisa. So this is derabanan, says the Mishnah Berurah. He says, the dafka b'mekayim hamisrafais. This is only usher in the ditch where the water evaporated. Sheshamhu makam gidulai shalamelach. Because that's what's similar to the place of growth of the salt. Dumya deshibalun shabasadeh, which is similar to the ears of grain in the field. You're not allowed to do ma'amer in the ears of grain in the field where the grain grew. Aval, however, im nispazer b'makam acher, but if salt scattered somewhere else, you're allowed to go gather up the salt. That's not similar to ma'amer because you're not dealing with makam gidulai. Lamed Vav, the Mechaber said it's similar to Ma'amer, therefore this is an Issa D'Rabbanan. Aval Imor Gufa Leka, but it's not really the Issa D'Raisa of Ma'amer, Dein Imor Ela B'Gdula Karka, because Ma'amer is only by something that grows from the ground, and salt does not grow from the ground. So it's not an Issa D'Raisa, it's an Issa D'Rabbanan because it's similar. And therefore it says the Mechaber, go back up to the Mechaber, he continues in Sif Tes, the chain, and similarly, also lekabetz kol davar mimakom gidulai. You're not allowed to gather anything. And even though the Mechaber uses the word aser, which usually means a derabanan, right? Usually when the Mechaber wants to say a daraisa, he says chayiv. Over here he says aser. The chain aser over here, it's a daraisa. Lekabetz kol davar mimakom gidulai. Anything that grows from the ground is an issa daraisa to gather it from the place that it grows. So if you have an apple tree and the apples fall on the ground and now you want to gather up the apples on Shabbos and bring them into the house. So first of all, if the apples fell off the tree on Shabbos, the muktzah. But even if the apple fell off the tree before Shabbos, now you want to go serve apples for dessert, you're not allowed to go gather up those apples. That's makam gidulai. That's called, even though they grow on the tree, but when they're on the ground under the tree, that's called makam gidulai, and you're not allowed to go gather them up. That's the Issa D'Raisa of Ma'amer. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois Lamed Zayin, Kol Davar, Hainu, Peros, fruits, V'yerakos, vegetables, V'eitzim, wood, if you want to gather up wood that you need for something, v'asavim, or any kind of grasses, v'chol davar hagodol min hakarka, anything that grows from the ground, you can't gather up. It's ma'amer. This is an issa daraisa to gather up these things where they grow. Because this is the daraisa of the malach of ma'amer. This that the Mechaber chose to use the word aser instead of chayiv, even though it's an issa daraisa, is lahayrais lanu, to teach us the shaloi b'makom gidulan, that if you're dealing with gathering up things not where they grow, shaloi b'makom gidulan, kigain, for example, shenispazru perais babayis, apples spilled out in the house, so it's not makom gidulai. Afilu isura nami leka kisha mekabtzin yachad. Over there isn't even an issa d'Rabbanan to go gather them up. So the Mechaber used aser instead of chayiv by the daraisa to hint to us. Sometimes you would think if this is a daraisa to do it b'makom gidulai, so you might naturally think that to do it shaloi b'makom gidulai would be a d'Rabbanan. So the Mechaber dropped us a hint. And he used the word aser here, not the word chayiv, to let us know, don't think that there's a gzeira coming off as a daraisa, that there's a gzeira of shaloi b'makom gidulai, atu makom gidulai. We don't make such a gzeira. Why don't we make such a gzeira? So the Chayyim says the reason we don't make that gzeira is because makaim b'makaim loy chalif. We're not going to mix up an iser. The iser of ma'amer, what is that iser? That iser is gathering up grain in the field. We're not going to think when we're in our kitchen that if I could pick up apples from the kitchen floor, I could also go out to an apple orchard and gather up apples. This is a kitchen, that's a field. So it says the Chayyim, that mistake you're not going to make. There's no room there for a gzeira. Now, the caveat that the Chavetz Chaim throws in here, which is very important, we learned this previously, is va'ayin la'el siman shin lamed hey sif hey. Don't forget what we learned in Shin Lamed Hey, where we said over there that there are times when there's an Issa D'Rabbanan in gathering up things that fell. Because if you remember, we said that if you have fruits that fell and they're scattered all over the place, we said you're supposed to pick up one at a time to eat it. You're not allowed to go gather it up in a basket. And we said the Issa of that is Uvda D'Chayil. Now we said that according to most Paiskim, that doesn't seem to apply inside the kitchen. You don't have to worry about gathering up stuff from your kitchen floor. But if stuff fell outside, you're in the bungalow colony, stuff fell on the ground outside, to go start gathering things and put them in a box looks like Uvda D'Chayil. Looks like you're in the apple business and you're carting up apples to go sell apples. Also, potentially, there was a problem of Berurah if it got mixed up in pebbles and dirt, etc. And this is where we'll stop for today.